I got shadows on the run, and I'm not trying to chase them. Pull the curtains one by one, light filling the spaces. No words left to leave unsaid, no more living with regret. We don't face slowly. Reservations on the floor, unafraid to let it show, 'cause love is holy. I'm starting with you, you. I'm taking my chances with you, you.
What's good, creative fam? Brandon Washington here, and this past weekend I did the absolute unthinkable. I took the notoriously overheating Canon R5 with me to shoot a wedding. Now, this was only after shooting with the camera for about 6 hours prior, and before you go down in the comments and tell me how stupid I was or how bad of an idea this was, I know. But the only way to truly know how a camera will work in a real world situation is to shoot it in a real world situation. Also, most of the videos on the R5 are doing everything they can to make this camera overheat to prove that it does. So with my videos, I've been trying a slightly different approach to show you what you can experience with this camera, or what your experience can be like with this camera if you're not absolutely just trying to kill it. Now, as I mentioned, I only had a few moments with this camera prior to shooting it with this wedding. And just in case you missed my last video, which, side note, if you don't want to miss any of my upcoming videos, be sure to smash the subscribe button, but also click on that little bell so you're notified as soon as a new video is released. Here are a few of my overarching discoveries from my first experience with the camera. First off, the camera produces a phenomenal image as long as you're not stressing the dynamic range too much. It's kind of a struggle regaining highlight details, and then also, yes, there is an overheating thing to worry about, which I've narrowed down to pretty much the limiting factor being the memory card. So this was something I was definitely going to need to be aware of when shooting the wedding. But then lastly, the 8K, although beautiful, is something that I must always say isn't something the camera's really designed for. The camera is not designed for shooting 8K for long periods of time. Although honestly, I felt like it'd be overkill for this wedding. Like, who's gonna shoot a wedding in 8K? I guess just to add one more thing, the 4K 60 on this camera is absolutely beautiful and more than enough for what I was gonna need for shooting this wedding. And because I know how I was planning to shoot this wedding, or really how I was gonna shoot it using this camera, I knew it really wasn't gonna be a big deal. So to be completely transparent, let me quickly break down how I go about shooting my wedding so you can fully understand how the Canon R5 was gonna fit into that workflow. First off, all of the weddings that I shoot revolve around a two-person setup. One person has a built-out camera on a monopod, which has recently been the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K. The other person has a mirrorless camera, or in the past it was a DSLR camera, on a gimbal. And a third camera that's on a tripod for the master shot of the ceremony. I really won't go into too much detail on how I actually shoot the wedding, but I will say when it comes to the gimbal camera, this camera is primarily for capturing B-roll of the day, shooting at 60 frames per second almost all day. It's capturing on and off. At no point is it running a shot that's really more than 30 seconds. The other reason why I prefer to use a mirrorless camera with this setup is because when it comes to using a gimbal, personally, I like the option of using autofocus, because keeping a subject in focus manually, while possible, I mean, it's not impossible, it sure does help to have a camera that can manage the focus on its own. So I know what you're asking, and I know what's on the tip of your curiosity, and that is, how did the camera do? Well, I was pleasantly surprised that at no point did the camera fully overheat. I have to be completely honest. There were a few moments there where I got an indicator warning showing that it had dropped down to 20 minutes, and at one point it even got as low as 10 minutes. However, at no point did the camera fully shut off, and I had to switch to my backup camera. I also never felt really worrisome that if I was gonna miss a shot. Now, sure, when I saw the 10-minute indicator, I got a bit nervous. However, it jumped back up to 15 minutes just a few moments later, and then it was gone shortly thereafter. Now, I understand that this probably doesn't sound right to you. I mean, I'm just like you. I've been watching a lot of R5 videos on YouTube, and pretty much everyone has concurred that this camera cannot be used when shooting weddings. But I'm living proof that it can be done. And not only does this camera do a phenomenal job at shooting weddings, but I think that the video out of this camera looks stellar. Now, before you click off this video, I have a slight confession to make. And this isn't really easy to say, but I've kind of tricked you. I mean, hold on. Basically, all the video that you've watched in this video, all the footage from this wedding was captured on the Canon R5 in 4K 60, but it was captured in IPB mode. Now, before you go out and grab your pitchforks and round up your anti-Canon mob, give me just a second to plead my case. There has been a lot of talk about All-I HQ versus IPB. And to be completely honest, in the 10 years that I've been shooting video and in the past 5 years professionally, I still don't think I truly understand the difference between All-I and IPB. So in layman's term, All-I is supposed to be better than IPB because of some weird frame skipping, right? The individual frames will not look as high quality. However, unless you're using those individual frames for something like VFX or saving those frames for photos, I couldn't see a reason for using one or the other than the fact that IPB is easier on the memory card and consequently the camera. So it's definitely something for me to consider before shooting this wedding. Now, I tested them both out side by side, and honestly, I didn't see any difference in the picture. You can look at them side by side here. The shots are literally taken one after the other, so the lighting has not changed. And if you can tell a difference, please leave it in the comments because your eyes are clearly better than mine. Now, the blog post also mentioned that you would see a difference in color grading. However, here, I didn't see any differences. Even when I tried to apply an insane grade to try to introduce banding, I was unable to see how one Kodak was faring better than the other. Now, I wish I could say the cheating stopped there, but to be honest with you, on top of shooting at IPB, I also turned off the camera in between shooting scenarios. This camera takes less than 5 seconds to turn on and be ready to roll, so I felt like it would be helpful to turn off the camera when I wasn't using it in order to preserve battery life and keep the heat down on the memory card. Speaking of memory cards, I did use a CF Express card, and the only one I had was a 256 gigabyte one. Now, around this time of the reception, the memory card did completely fill up, but at this point the wedding was basically over. However, I had a backup SD card in the camera already, and I was surprised to actually find out that the camera could shoot 4K 60 frames per second IPB mode to an SD card. Now, I say all of this stuff is cheating, but is it really? I mean, sure, you want to hate this camera, it's going to be very easy for you to do that. But as someone who has been filming all types of videos for many years, I have learned that there is no perfect camera and definitely no perfect shooting scenarios. I've been on the shoot when I was actually there with the DSLR, and like the guy right next to me was filming on a Red, and he was having a miserable time, and I was catching some of the best shots of my life. I don't really think that it's cheating to shoot a camera in a way that gives the camera its best shot at success. I'm just thinking, as you know, as a part of us being like professionals, this should be part of our job when working with different cameras. Do I wish this camera could shoot entirely in 4K 60 frames per second, All-I HQ mode, and never deal with overheating? Sure, but it can't, and I'm just keeping it real. But I think the more important question is, will your clients actually be able to tell the difference between the All-I and the IPB mode? No, and more importantly, I don't even think you'll notice the difference. I mean, the footage looks great, and on top of that, the battery life was amazing. I only went through 2 batteries all day, and I can honestly say that the Canon R5 made it through an entire day of shooting for a wedding. Now, obviously, your mileage may vary. I've been shooting weddings for many years, and I'm not one of those like shooters that just kind of run around and spray and pray and hope that they got good shots. My shots are very methodically timed out, and I only capture what I know I'm going to need. I don't overshoot. Now, in my opinion, if you're a Canon shooter and you want the option of shooting in 4K 60 for slow motion, or the potential of reframing, there are only a few options you have. The 1DX Mark II or III, and also don't forget the R6. I mean, yes, it's just right around the corner, especially after shooting this wedding. I'm even more excited about this camera and all of its functionalities that's gonna be coming to the Canon mirrorless lineup. For all you Sony fanboys, all 2 of you who are still watching this video at this time, I wish I could speak on how the A7S III compares, but I just haven't got a chance to shoot with it, so I can't really speak about it. So if you're interested in the R5 for, its stellar photography capabilities and, its limited but equally stellar 8K capabilities, but you want the option of shooting weddings with this camera, if you follow my roadmap, I can say that without hesitation, this camera will get the job done. As I continue to work on my full review, please leave additional questions that you have for me down below in the description. Also, if you missed my last video, be sure to check it out as I go into kind of my first impressions with this camera as well, and then the full review is still coming soon, so make sure you be on the lookout for that. I still want to take it out on a few professional jobs so I can have a complete understanding of how this camera really works over time. But thank you so much for checking out this video. Hit that like button, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.